how's everyone doing? Happy Monday morning to you all. If we can go to the next slide, we'll kind of get into it. All right, so in health news, though there's around 300,000 more cases and 6,000 more deaths, there's a positive decline, or let's say there is a decline of 19% in cases and 3% in deaths nationwide. The Trump administration is aggressively working to develop a vaccine, as well as drugs to treat people who already have COVID-19, though some have accused the administration of taking shortcuts and supporting untested solutions, including hydroxychloroquine and now plasma treatment that was rushed by the FDA this past week. In addition, the president has promised a vaccine by this November. I think some folks are waiting with bated breath. Certainly we've seen Russia, they announced a vaccine last week, which was met with a lot of skepticism. So stay tuned there. In economic news, the US debt has now exceeded the US GDP thanks to plummeting tax revenues and economic activity. In the past, deficit hawks and others have said that this is an inflection point, but we're really seeing here that it has not yet triggered some of the items that they would have considered, including higher inflation, higher taxes, and even higher interest rates. The US is currently weathering the storm. Again, we continue to focus and look at some of these economic indicators. Furthermore, we saw last week the stock market did rally, primarily led by the tech industry. So we're seeing that the recovery is fairly uneven across the board, and certainly within the nonprofit sector. Just beyond that, general economic indicators, we're seeing evidence that this is no longer just a low wage recession. I think a lot of folks seeing that restaurants were being impacted, as well as hospitality and some of the other job areas where people were making less than $50,000 were kind of the hardest hit. But what we're seeing from the numbers now is that in 2019 compared to 2020 at this time, actually the decline in new hiring is around, I'm looking at my numbers here, is around half actually. So in terms of the amount of new jobs that haven't been picked up since 2019, that number of people making over 50,000 is twice as high as the decrease from 2019 in terms of people who are in jobs below $50,000. So in economic numbers specifically, 28 million people are still on unemployment, which we reported last week. Around 9 million people claiming unemployment are in the lower 40% of the job market or the job pool, as versus 3 million in the upper 40%. Beyond that, for this slide, Congress is out of session until after Labor Day, so we have a couple of weeks to go. In Pennsylvania updates and PA news specifically, we're seeing flattening numbers and more testing available, especially in rural areas. The PA Department of Health launched a mobile testing unit out of several YMCAs, including in central PA, so Lancaster, Lebanon, and York counties. As we wait for the unemployment numbers for August, the PA Department of Labor and Industry has applied for President Trump's $300 per week per unemployed person for unemployment insurance. Governor Wolf, I know, was reluctant to file for this type of unemployment benefit, but there were fewer options available after the $600 per week expired at the end of July. But we just recognizing also that this isn't really a true unemployment insurance program, since around 44 million has been redirected from FEMA specifically for hurricane relief. So we're waiting for after Congress comes back from session in order to see how the federal government might continue to fund some kind of unemployment insurance from there. In Pennsylvania, a win for Democratic petitioners, a federal judge in PA halted the Trump campaign's filing to sue PA essentially for how it sends and counts mail-in ballots. And then in Allegheny County news, we are flattening the curve here with only 600 more cases, and there were 25 deaths within the past week as well. Allegheny County compares favorably to the national average, and the drop from August 6th to August 19th was around 40%. So that tells you that the numbers were a bit high previously, but they've gone down precipitously from there. So the exhibit below shows just a couple of different counties that we're ahead of, including Fayette, Indiana, and Beaver. So stay tuned for more information there. Finally, just some concluding thoughts. Tonight is the start of the Republican National Committee Convention, which we'll see 4 straight nights of President Trump on at 10 p.m. as the speaker. We'll see if they actually keep to this run of shows, since a lot of the scheduling has been fairly dynamic. I know that news stations are unsure of how they're going to cover it because of, basically up till 4 weeks ago, President Trump was still saying that we were going to be in Jacksonville, and previous to that, it was supposed to be in Charlotte. So we'll see where everyone ends up in terms of coverage, but look for lots of speeches from members of the president's family, as well as some folks who are in the administration. In education news, thank you to Dr. Hamlet for participating on today's call. I know that he signed off. We're closely following universities and K-12 schooling, and a lot of postponements have already been announced on both ends, despite the threats of the Trump administration to withhold funding. So I think a lot of the folks in the administration are blaming different types of anecdotal situations, including blaming undergrads for partying as a result of, or that have created spikes in new cases. We covered the Postal Service last week. As mentioned, Speaker Pelosi did call the House back into session, and the House voted to appropriate $25 billion to the Postal Service, as well as blocking any action this year for changes to the Postal Service. And Postmaster General DeJoy also confirmed that there would be no changes until 2021. And then finally, just the natural disaster news. There are 2 incoming hurricanes going into the Gulf, as well as ongoing forest fires in California. I only mentioned this, the California piece, because we at the Forbes Funds have a particular consideration for previously incarcerated people, and it's an issue that's important to us. California routinely uses hundreds of folks that are currently incarcerated to shore up their firefighting forces. And so because the jails and the prisons were decarcerated in California in advance of the forest fires, they're recruiting a lot from the East Coast, as well as even as far as Australia. So just an interesting piece of news there. So with that, I'll turn it back to Hannah or the floor. Thanks.